Hello, everybody. So this is going to be an interesting educational tidbit because I seem to have this issue with a lot of people in my replay sessions, and that's how I've kind of learned what subjects to give you guys for these little tidbits, if I can see common misunderstandings amongst my replay submissions or coaches. So what the misunderstanding that we're going to see here is that people seem to think that if you are a strong early game carry, that you should look to participate in fights. And we're talking like super early on in the game. And so I've talked a lot about how carries will have their farming rotation, oftentimes if they're Radiant, in this case we're talking about the Slark, to be eventually to go into the triangle, maybe look to pressure this top tower and look to rotate on the top half of the map. We've come to this conclusion that a lot of carries like to play like this. And the ones that like to play like this often can clear stacks, can clear ancients in general. They farm pretty fast such that they can do all of these things in terms of farm, but then they can also take the tower. So it's usually a lot to do with either the fact that they have to be that safe or that they can accelerate themselves enough that they can do all of these things. If all of the heroes that like to play that area are ones that either need to be super safe, because the triangle is generally the safest part of the map, or that they accelerate themselves fast enough that they can clear all these camps and hit the tower, then what kind of heroes does that leave to not do that? Seems pretty obvious, right? Heroes that are survivable who don't farm as fast. So the heroes that I'm going to use as examples for this specific video that are like the archetypes, but there's others, there can be others, are Slark, Weaver, Lifestealer, and Morphling. All four of these heroes, especially like level 7, 8, 9-ish, you know, right when the laning stage usually ends and the heroes start to look to go jungling. These heroes have a lot of survivability tools. They often trade really well. They can often be very scary to lane against 1v1, and they don't farm very fast in comparison to a lot of other carries. So what that means for them is that the optimal play, oftentimes, is to stay in their own safe lane as long as possible.
Banana slam jam.
So this stemmed from a replay I did of a 2K Slark player right here, where he's 4-0 at 8 minutes into the game. And the emphasis of this video is that this is what you want to do. It's not something you're able to do every game, but it's the dream on these heroes. It's the absolute dream. And the reason why it's the dream is because if you're constantly applying pressure down here and forcing reactions and people can't kill you, then what happens is your team will almost always be able to invade the opponent because you're forcing like a 1v2 down here, so your rest of your team can run at the enemy carry. So you're basically creating pressure on the rest of the map by making it because the opponent doesn't pressure you. Does that make sense? Hope it does. So your goal when you're having a really good lane on these heroes, and honestly, the games you pick these heroes, you should look to pick them in games like this where you can play like this. These heroes, their lane matchups are much more important than a hero like Sven or Luna or Medusa. Because as Sven, Luna, Medusa, when I get level 6, I'm just leaving. But as like a Slark, a Weaver, the Lifestealer, and Morph, we want to stay in lane as long as possible. So a lot of the heroes that they lane well against are the ones that don't kill them when they're both like level 7. His goal after watching this video should be to stay in this lane. Because look at the way Skywrath and Phoenix have to play, right? They have to play really scared. He's super scary. He has complete control of this lane. He's super survivable because he's got Dark Pact Pounce and Shadow Dance. And he has all of these two camps to consistently farm and the lane to farm. And being a 2K player that he is, he's going to see a fight going on in his own triangle, and he's just going to leave. And I'm going to tell you guys that if you are these heroes, don't leave. Unless your team is getting dove under their tier 3 towers and you're losing a kill score of 0 to 12, do not do this. It has to be the most disastrous situation in the history of Dota. These are game-ruining TPs. Why? It's 8-18 when he TPs, 38 CS. He kills the Invoker, but he has 38 CS. 8-15 when he leaves, guys. 8-15 when he leaves. At 9:47, he has 39 CS. He left with 38 CS, and he came back with 39 after a minute and a half. The thing about these heroes is they don't farm very fast. They often don't have the mana to fight and farm in other lanes. That TP mana is often very costly to these heroes, right? They're either Agi or Strength heroes that don't have a lot of mana to spare. And you should do this only if you absolutely have to in terms of TPing the other lanes. So that's the 2K example, and I'm just going to show you what I would want you to do. Emphasis being that these are the games that you are living the dream. You picked a really good Slark game, a really good Lifestealer game, a really good whatever hero game that fits this description. And this is what you're going to do. So as Lifestealer, the reason why I picked in this game was I was against Pango Phoenix. And even though my lane started out a bit rough, I was actually losing in levels to the Pango. Eventually, Pango and Phoenix do not kill Lifestealer, which makes it a good Lifestealer game. Because he never has to leave his own safe lane. And what's going to happen is, we're going to watch how I play. We're literally just going to leave this on fast forward. These heroes, they trade really well, they push in the lane, they constantly apply pressure to the tower. Anyone who comes into their lane has to avoid them. This is the dynamic that all of these heroes have. Morph, Lifestealer, Slark, Weaver. Repeat, repeat, repeat. All of them have this same dynamic. Shove in the lane, look to play efficient in your own safe lane. About the same as last game, winning by about 1k, 2k. Do I have a slight kill advantage? I don't have any kills, but I'm just going to keep pushing in the lane and killing this big camp every minute. Whoever comes to my lane, I'm going to hit them, right? I'm going to control my own safe lane. Push it into the tower, keep clearing. No matter how far ahead we get, this is my dream. I have no reason to do anything else in the game. This is how these heroes want to play. And when everyone's doing something on the map, as you see here, there's like a 4v4 going on, I'm going to apply a lot of pressure to this tower. Making sure I stack that camp at the minute mark again. Notice how on Lifestealer, if I'm allowed to play here, I'm going to go for the Maelstrom. If I had to go items that allowed me to play here, like if I had to go Armlet or something like that, then I would do it. I would build whatever items allow me to sit here. But since I didn't feel very much pressure, I went for the Farm Acceleration item. So it's like on Weaver, you could go Linken's, you could go Maelstrom. On Slark, you could go Echo Saber. If you were like really greedy, you go Midas, but I don't really recommend that. Because these heroes want to be able to occupy their lane. And notice how no matter what's going on in the game, I am on rinse and repeat. One guy shoves me out of lane, and I end up leaving at 13 minutes into the game, right? And my team has been owning this whole time, and I don't want you to get me wrong. Yes, I'm owning. My team is owning. I've done virtually nothing. But this is the dream, guys. These heroes that don't farm all that fast, that are super survivable, let your team run around as 4 while you just take all the dangerous farm, the opponent's getting absolutely 0 objectives, and it's the difference between these heroes and a hero like Clinkz. Clinkz and these other greedy carries, they get booted out of their lane. They lose their tier 1 tower super on and early on in the game. Your hero's strength when you're playing the Slarks, the Weavers, the Lifestealers, and the Morphs is that this is what it looks like. This is the strength of your hero. Notice how I waited until a guy sent me down to 20% HP before I left this lane. So I was a Weaver against a kind of a tough lane. And so because they had a lot of harass on the Kunkka and the Lina, and I eventually wanted a Linken's, I went for a really early Ring of Health. Why? Because that's the item I need to be able to stay in lane. On a hero like Slark, you're obviously not going to go health regen. Most of the time on a hero like Lifestealer with innate sustain, you're not going to go health regen. But look at how I'm going to play. I'm just going to let my team run around the map, doing whatever they want, and this is what these heroes are beautiful at. You're going to see here that I was just laning 1v2. It's not super efficient, right? But I'm just laning 1v2, and eventually my teammates can connect to me if they want, but I'm going to consistently represent a threat in my lane. And I'm never leaving. Absolutely never leaving. Does this look like the exact same thing as the Lifestealer game? Spoiler alert. It is literally the exact same thing. Shove in the lane. Make sure I farm the big camp every minute. These heroes don't farm fast, so it's really important that they farm every minute because they don't farm stacks. And anybody who comes to my lane, they die. Oh, I died to a gank. I didn't expect a level 6 disruptor in 9 minutes. Very small detail. What am I going to do now that I've died? Okay, I'm going to quickly participate in a gank because I died. Guess what I'm going to do after that, guys? Right back to my job. Have I left lane willingly a single time? No. I've died or been pushed out. That is the goal of these heroes. This is how they want to play. My teammate wanted to go in for some stupid kill. I ignored him and let him die. I'm going to keep staying bottom. Notice how I got 3 heroes in my lane, so I left. And then I go mess with other people and take towers. This whole time, everything revolves around what does it take for me to stay bottom. They bring 3 heroes, I leave bottom and do something else. They drop those 3 heroes, I go back somewhere else. Look at how I keep wanting to go back bottom, but they just keep bringing heroes there. So I'm going to fast forward. I know this seems like I'm not even in bottom lane, but they've consistently brought 3 heroes to my lane. I'm just going to go right back even though I lost my tower. It's the same thing over and over. These heroes play their own side of the map, especially when you have somebody on your team that takes buildings like Lycan. Lycan, any building hitters, they don't want to play this side of the map. So these super survivable heroes, we've got a mid-tier 1 because they brought 3 heroes to take my bottom tier 1. That's exactly what you want to do on these heroes. Every move I make is so I can eventually come back bottom. And the only reason I leave bottom is because they make me leave. So a lot of redundancy, but it's so much emphasis on the same thing every single game on these heroes. That's all you want to do. And what I'm seeing in my games or in my replay submissions is that people just willingly give up the freest lanes where they could occupy them and free farm. Or at least, like, never die, keep their tower alive. And that's exactly what Slark, Weaver, Lifestealer, and more type heroes love doing. So please, guys, if you're these type of really survivable, not flash farming carries, stick to your safe lane as long as possible. Aim for it. Your items, your skill build, your playstyle, everything. And look to do exactly what I did in these games. Don't be the Slark. Hope this educational tidbit thing helped. I'm not sure. Like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of BS.